The exhibition shown on our projector is of a series of recently discovered planets orbiting a nearby star. They are on loan from a local planetarium. Let's learn about these planets and how to use significant figures as we do so. Firstly, what are significant figures? Significant figures follow three rules. The first one's very easy. Any number that's not a zero is a significant figure. So here we have 3 significant figures, here we have 2, and lastly we have 6. But when zeros get trapped between significant figures, then they are significant. So we have 3 significant figures in our first number because the 0 is trapped between the 1 and the 7. In our second number, we have 3 significant figures because the 0 on the end is not trapped between 2 other significant figures, so it's called a trailing 0 and we ignore it. And finally, for our last number, we have 6 significant figures because the 2 zeros are trapped and the 0 on the end is a trailing 0, so we ignore it. So that's our second rule. Zeros that are trapped between significant figures do get counted. Our third and final rule is that the only other time zeros count is if they are after a significant figure within a decimal. So our first 2 zeros here do not count, and then we get our significant figure, so any zeros after that will count. So in this number we have 3 significant figures, and then in our next number we ignore the first 3 zeros until we get to our 1, our first significant figure, and then everything after this will count as a significant figure, even if it's a 0. So as a fast summary before we start using significant figures, any non-zero is a significant figure, any trapped zeros, significant figure, and any zeros after a significant figure in a decimal. Let's find out about our planets. Our first planet, Lirio, has an average temperature of around -185 degrees Celsius. And let's use this to practice identifying significant figures. So here we can see that every number is greater than 0, and so we would have 5 significant figures. If we look at our atmospheric pressure, 0.14 has 2 significant figures because the 0 is before the significant figures in a decimal, so it doesn't get counted. And in 0.9, it's the same rule, so that just has 1. And now if we look at the percentage of hydrogen in the atmosphere, 95.02, we have 4 significant figures because our 0 is trapped, so our second rule. Our next planet is Ursa. This is how hot it is on the surface of the planet, so really, really hot. This is its gravity, which is a bit less than half of the gravity on Earth, so you'd be able to jump a lot higher. And this is the mean escape velocity, which is how much velocity a rocket would need on average to launch off out of its atmosphere into space. We round to significant figures just like we round with decimals. To round this number to 1 significant figure, we find our first significant figure and then our second, and our second is now our decider as we use it to decide which way to round. If it's 5 or above, we round up. Here it's 2, so we round down. So to 1 significant figure, our number is 4. To 2, we find our first 2 significant figures, and then our decider, which this time is 5, so we round up, 4.3. If we round the planet's temperatures to 3 significant figures, we start by finding our 3 significant figures, so 1, 8, and 4, but then we look at the next number and round that. If we round our temperature in Fahrenheit to 4 significant figures, we find our first 4 significant figures and our decider. This time it's a 7, so we round up, 363.5 degrees Fahrenheit. And what about numbers that start with zeros? Our air density was 0.68706, about half of that of Earth's, so objects would move a lot faster through the air on planet Ursa. And let's try rounding this to significant figures. To 3, we ignore the first 0 because it's before a significant figure. Count out 3 from our first and look at our decider, and it's a 0, so we round down. To 4 significant figures, we again ignore the first 0, but the second one we count as our 4th significant figure because it was after a significant figure. 6 is our decider, so we round up to 0.6871. I will leave you a summary of our 3 rules. Any non-zeros, any trapped zeros, and any zeros after a significant figure in a decimal are all significant figures.